Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story about persistence, clever problem solving, and getting even with a predatory parking system. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Give me a parking ticket for a spot I paid for, I dare you. About 10 or so years ago, I went to a concert an hour away from me in Indianapolis. Decided to make a day of it, going to several museums and spots around the city, each time paying for parking in a garage for 2 or so hours, then going to meander around the area. Finally, I go park close to the venue and paid for parking until the time it was free. Total, I probably paid $40 to $50 for parking throughout the day. Enjoyed the concert, but come back to a parking ticket on my car. I think, this is odd, but I'm tired and chalk it up to a mistake, but I decide to take photos of my parking spot. Both spots on either side were taken, and all the signage, and head home for the evening, figuring I would sort it out in the morning. The next morning, I review the ticket, the photo of my spot, and my parking receipt. The ticket did not line up to the spot my car was located in, and my receipt shows that I had valid parking at the time of the ticket. So I submit an appeal thinking, this'll be easy. It's obvious that a mistake was made. The appeal was denied. The ticket was for the spot that was not paid for, ergo, it stood. I called the office and the lady said they did not make a mistake as my receipt showed that I paid for spot X1 and the ticket was for spot X. I asked about the photo proof that my car was in spot X1. She said, well, you could have moved the car. Note, the parking receipt included my license plate number and everything. Think Park Mobile-like system. I noted that there were cars and spots on either side of me and that the entire street was full because of the concert, and honestly, I don't think they bothered to look at the photo. Even had that not been the case, I had proof that the license plate had a paid parking spot. No matter what, no dice. I'm feeling petty over this $25 parking ticket at this point, so I called Visa and asked if I could retract the amount I paid for the time that I had parked since it didn't count. I submitted all the evidence and documentation to Visa. Visa, in what was the greatest thing Visa has ever done in my opinion, they agreed that if my parking receipt and transaction number wasn't proof I had paid for parking, then clearly I had paid for a service I did not receive. And they extended my initial request of canceling the one transaction to include all the parking spots I had paid for through the system that day, valued at more than the parking ticket. Then they filed a formal complaint on my behalf with a letter explaining why they were refunding me. I would not have been nearly as satisfying if I had not spent the entire day playing tourist in the city and racking up a large parking bill all with the same vendor. Haha, nicely played and well done, Visa. It's not often that a credit card company gets congratulated for over and above service. Also, a $25 parking ticket? Wow, that's so cheap compared to the last one I got. And our second story. They're going to live in my house. I want to scream at my mother-in-law until the cows come home. I can't believe her. I inherited my grandparents' house, which is on a lake in a small, slightly touristy town where I owned a pretty touristy business. I had to close my business in March because of COVID, and I don't think I'll ever be able to reopen. Prior to that, my fiancé had been looking for work near me so he could move to my place, but with his job being more stable, I ended up moving to him. We haven't yet decided whether to sell my house or use it as an income property via Airbnb or similar. The house is not set up as an Airbnb right now. It's very much still my house. Most of my belongings are still there. Its walls are covered in pictures of my family, etc. It's in a very touristy neighborhood, and most houses on the street are second homes for people, but not for me. Last Wednesday, my future mother-in-law showed up while I was not home and told fiancé we're going to have a getaway with friends at Lake House this weekend, so we just came to get the keys. Future father-in-law and 2 other couples were already waiting outside in an SUV packed up and ready for the weekend. Fiancé was confused and asked if they talked to me, and his mom misleadingly said, "We've been texting about it." We'd been texting about the house, but she never asked to use it. She just texted me asking if I had sold it yet, and I said no. Fiancé's smart and decided to call me before doing anything, but I was at the dentist and couldn't answer for half an hour. During that time, his mom got upset that he wouldn't give her my keys and then started spewing out ridiculousness. She told him we should be grateful that we have someone willing to go sit there for the weekend and make sure everything's okay at the house, and then that we should be grateful for an opportunity to have a practice run for it as a vacation rental that they were willing to try for free, and that if your first visit is paying customers, then it doesn't go well, then you have to pay them. But they're willing to do this for us for free, yada, yada, yada. Basically acting like it's a favor they are doing me by deciding, without asking, that they're going to live in my house for 4 days with 4 other strangers. Since fiance couldn't reach me and he was sure I wouldn't have agreed to this without telling him, he wouldn't give up the keys, and she got upset saying they've already promised their friends a vacation. He told them they would have to pay for hotel rooms then, which apparently pissed her off more, and they left. Now, several weeks prior to all this, she'd been asking questions about the house. If it was in planning for this, I have no idea. Like, aren't I worried about it being unattended, etc.? I said my neighbor has a key and watches it for me. Well, they went to the house and went to the neighbors' houses and tried to con them out of a key. She introduced herself to the neighbor and told them my key was packed up in boxes, and I had told her to stop at the neighbors, laughed about how she didn't think to ask which side the neighbor was on, etc. She went first to the wrong house, which had weekend renters in it, and then she went to the other side where she found the guy who does indeed have the key. Thank God he was smart and knew it was unlike me to have this happen. He told her he had to go look for the key, locked the door, and called the police. He said she banged on his door a bunch after a while, and the police took forever to show up. When they did show up, they found her and future father-in-law trying to break into my house via a first-floor window. They were very nearly arrested, but got out of it. Well, late last night they got home. No clue what they ended up doing, but I know it wasn't at my house. And FMIL posted a long rant on Facebook and made it as misleading as possible. She said they were willing to do me a huge favor in return for a weekend at my lake house, and they held up their end of the bargain, but at the last minute, I ruined their vacation and wouldn't give them keys when they and their friends were already packed and in the car. She made it sound like we had a deal agreed upon ahead of time and all this stuff. Now it has 40 comments from all her friends saying I sound like a brat. They can't believe fiancé would date someone so selfish, etc. Makes me want to rip my hair out. I shouldn't care what people think, and yet it makes me want to scream knowing all these people think I'm a brat when they literally tried to break into my house after being told no. I've never seen this side of them, but the thing that scares me is that fiancé isn't surprised. He's angry and upset and yelled at them on the phone multiple times and has told them they're not welcome in either of our homes, but he's not surprised. So this type of behavior isn't a surprise coming from these people. Today, I'm installing better locks and security cameras. Wish me luck. She's embarrassed because her plan didn't work, so she's trying to save face. Ah, vanity. Remember, these people's brains don't work in the same way as yours. And our last story. They kicked me out of the house I own. My parents were living together, but not married when I was born. They were living in my father's childhood home, which he had inherited as his parents died before I was born. They didn't feel that getting married was necessary. My father passed away in a car accident when I was 10 and didn't have a will, and as he wasn't married to my mother, I inherited the house as well as all of his assets, which are used to pay the utilities on our home. My mother met my stepfather a few years after my father died and married him when I was 12. My stepfather and stepbrother have been horrible to me ever since I met them. They treat me like garbage and had my mother convinced I was some kind of crazy criminal freeloader. I was always grounded for some random complaint or another. The day I turned 18, he tried to kick me out of the house, but was of course reminded by my mother that I owned the house and that I could live there as long as I wanted. Last month, my mother suffered a stroke and died before she reached the hospital. I was absolutely devastated. I decided to stay at a friend's house because his parents were there for me when my father died, and I felt safer there than with my dirtbag step-family. After a few days, I returned to my home to find that the locks had been changed and my key didn't work. My stepfather met me at the door and smugly told me that he owned the house now and I'm not welcome in his home. He claimed he had the deed changed over to his name and that I could pick up my things on Sunday. I was too emotionally broken to fight him and just went back to my friend's house in tears. They promised me they'd be able to take me to pick up my things and that they would help me sort out the situation when things had cooled down. We showed up Sunday to find every single thing I owned set up on tables in our yard, for sale, and with several strangers sorting through my belongings. My stepfather was selling off my possessions, including many of my father and grandparents' things left to me, and demanding that I buy back everything. What happened next is something I will always be grateful for. My friend's mother talked to all the customers and explained the situation, and meanwhile her husband drove to the nearest bank and withdrew $5,000 of their savings. They're not rich and had been saving the money for a cruise. I'll pay that back someday, regardless of how much he keeps insisting it's okay. In the end, I got back most of my stuff, save for my gaming PC, which some kid had bought for an insultingly low $50 before I showed up, and my mother's jewelry, which I'm certain is in some pawn shop somewhere. My grandfather's car, a beautiful Cadillac, which was transferred into my name years ago, was sent to a lot on the other side of town with a for sale sign in the window. Yesterday, I had to break into it and use the spare key under the passenger seat to drive it away. I received an angry text this morning telling me that if I don't give it back, the police will be called and I will be arrested. This scared me. My name's on the insurance and registration papers in the glove box, but I don't know if that's enough. My friend advised me to consult a lawyer to resolve the situation. At first, I was skeptical, but soon realized that it was my only way out. The lawyer turned out to be a professional with extensive experience in such cases and immediately took on my case. We gathered all the necessary documents proving my rights to the house and property, including the registration papers for the Cadillac. I also wrote a detailed statement about my stepfather's actions and provided all the available evidence of his illegal activities. The court proceedings began a few weeks later. My stepfather tried his best to weasel out, but his lies were quickly exposed. The judge ruled in my favor, confirming my right to the house and all my belongings. In addition, my stepfather was ordered to pay compensation for the damage caused by moral harm. The compensation money was enough to pay off my debt, but I think I owe them a lot more. What was that stepfather hoping for if he didn't have any documents? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.